Hello, everybody. Now, in this session, we are going to say something about property rights, biotechnology, bioethics, and the challenges of intellectual property in indigenous settings. In the previous lesson, we established very firmly that virtually everything we eat and drink here in our planet is a result of a collective process of biotechnological invention, namely the domestication of different species of plants and animals by means of artificial human-made selection, and that we also firmly established that this process is, let me remark, collective and transgenerational. It took so many generations of making errors and experimentation and doing it again and again and again in order to realize that some mushrooms are poisonous while others are not, that some animals are edible and others are not, including insects and also vertebrates, that some plants are poisonous and others are not, and even the pathways, the manipulations that the human kind made in order to step by step push ahead the domestication of plants like potato, corn, rice, and so on. So, from this point of view, I am afraid that we, the scientists, came too late for saying that we can invent something really relevant in terms of food and drinks. Wine was invented many thousands of years ago, and it took many generations of people to discover that grapes are not only a source of water in arid and semi-arid areas in the Middle East and the Mediterranean, but also that it is possible to take the grapes for producing a juice, and even after fermentation and some other processes, to convert it into the different beverages we have, including wine. So nobody is able to discuss that this is a collective process made by indigenous peoples worldwide in different places in domesticating and developing biotechnologically producing throughout the millennia the different types of food and drinks we have here. So now, if this is true, then when you as a biotechnology or as a scientist or a biotechnologist go to any indigenous setting, including Sicily, including South Tyrol, including the Amazon, Australia, uh, Southeast Asia, Mexico, Latin America, wherever you go to an indigenous setting, you must respect the indigenous knowledge. That we have a big reason for it. Without, they are our most important the most important representatives of an art, that's and a technology that you guys are learning just now in the universities. They are the repositories. They are um, the holders of a very long-standing tradition, as respectable as university empowered knowledge as well. So let me start now with a confession. I have been working in different indigenous settings and visiting different indigenous areas since my childhood when I was a kid in Panama, that is in the Central America, an Afro-Caribbean profile is the dominant culture we have there, with a strong Andalusian imprint from Spain, indigenous imprint, and a Afro-African, West African, chiefly West African peoples. But my confession is the following: as a scientist, I prefer to try to understand why forests are as they are, and I include the history of each forest as part of the explanation to be tested in the field. But I have renounced since many years to make biotechnology per se. During the 1990s, when I was still a student at the University of Panama, an undergraduate student, I new one of those academic new terms, university invented jargon emerged: bioprospection. The idea was using the discovering the chemical biochemical substances, the substances present in the different plants, animals, insects, and other organisms in the tropics in order to use them for something good. The excuse was, and I used to name it an excuse now after so many years. The argument was that it was very important to discover new foods, new ways of feeding the world, and new substances to be used as medicine or for something else. I don't know, cleaning houses and so on, and that it was possible to do it and at the same time protect biodiversity, because if biodiversity gives you money, then you want to take care of biodiversity. That was linked to simultaneously occurring big discussion in the biological realm, let's say, in the realm of biologists. To what extent do we, university academics, are able to, oh, let's let this motorino to get out of here. I'm sorry. Welcome to Italy. It's not that bad. Um, where we were? Oh yeah, okay. The discussion was to what extent we, the scientists, the people coming out of the universities, have the right of going over there to the Amazon, to the tropical rainforests, or even to the coast areas to study plants and animals and try to make substances to be profited, to produce profit, to produce merchandise, to produce products for any market without paying the indigenous guys living over there. During that time, one date getting closer and closer and even further in related to that was the 12th of was October 12th of 1992. It was the memorial. I don't used to call it the celebration. The memorial of the arrival of the Spaniards in America, in the Americas. The Mayflower played basically the same role, and for the indigenous peoples living over there, it was not, and it is not even today, a nice memory. So try to imagine you guys going down there to Latin America or to Africa, where many slaves were moved from their home countries to the Americas, to the United States, Brazil, the Caribbean area, and so on, as slaves. Try to imagine you guys, you yourself, you as a biotechnologist, say, going there and saying, I am the genius of biotechnology. I have the magna cum laude, the summa cum laude at my university, and I am going to save the world, and I am going to help you guys to cure disease. Please show me which are the plants you have here, and I am going to convert them into medicine and involve you guys into the profits of it. Well, if you do that, there will be a big discussion in the village. In some cases, you will probably realize that they are going to kick you out of there. In other cases, you will find that some people agree with the project. They say, no, we can make profit from it, earn some money, and empower our people in order to respond to some aggressions made by the descendants of the colonizadores over there. So that kind of implications go beyond what we are learning in textbooks in the university. They belong much more to politics, sociology, than to biochemistry or physiology or experimental biomedicine or something like that. So I sincerely realized during that time that it didn't make any sense for me, Edgardo Garrido Perez, as a researcher, to engage in such discussions. I was and I still remain convinced that the indigenous peoples have their own way of life. They have their own knowledge. They know us already enough. They go to universities as well, and they know how to administer their own lands. So I really prefer to learn from them. But once again, if I learn something from them and I publish it, what am I going to publish? If I am going to learn from them how to cure a disease and I publish it, even if I am not going to use the information for my own profit, for producing an industry owned by myself in order to earn money, taking advantage of this knowledge, I am going to publish the paper. And when I publish the paper, I do not have any control of who is going to read it and which purposes. Probably one big company has already paid scientists for reading papers like mine and then use it for producing, I don't know, poisons or pharmacological products or food or something like that, and then they are going to earn a lot of money, not pay me anything, and not paying the indigenous peoples even. So I really decided to remain on basic science, basic biology, understanding where and why some places are more biodiverse than others. This kind of investigation, this is basic science. I devote myself to try to answer the biggest and most permanent questions of biology, at least as far as I can, with the few coins I have for doing it. So, nevertheless, whenever I go to make a research study about secondary forest, in order to understand how the forest recover after human activities, I used to apply one protocol. It is called the free, prior, and informed consent. You can have a look into the internet at basically at the website of the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, and you get informed about it. Essentially, and what you make is you write a letter, you print it, you put your name, you put the name, if you are the chief, the principal investigator of the project, you put your own name. I try sometimes to put a photo of mine or of my passport or something like that. You write, this is a project about this and this and this. I used to add, this is not a project about this or that. My name is Edgardo Garrido Perez. I am living in this district, this address. This is my telephone number, and so on and so forth. And this research is in order to understand how the forests grow and how is the history of the forest and the land. I don't need the names of anyone. I used to write, I am not looking for oil, I am not looking for gold or diamonds or whatever. Please, if you realize that I am asking you something too far away, don't answer. You have the freedom of not taking part of the project. If you are a farmer and you have a piece of forest into your farm, you are not obliged. It is not mandatory to you to let me take measurements of terrain and trees over there. If I have students, you are not obliged to receive my students. If my students ask you something wrong or tell you something bad, please don't answer. And if you need me to pull the ear of my students, let me know. Here is my name, here is my address, and by telling them who you are, where are you from, what is your address, and which are the ways of reaching you, what I am trying to demonstrate to them is, if I do something wrong and I get out of here, you can call the police and try to make an alarm about any illicit I am making or any member of my research team is doing. That's fair play. That gives the people, the indigenous people, the opportunity to do it, even if they know, if some one of them don't know reading and writing, you read it in front of them, and you say, probably you don't know how to read and write. Nevertheless, let me leave you here, this letter here, with the printed information in given case. In any case, you can ask someone else to help you. And that's a way of being transparent. So the same is to be done also by people making applied research. You biotechnologists, anthropologists, ethnographers, historians, both basic and applied sciences and technology have to do that, and this is a result of the fight of the indigenous peoples worldwide who conquered a kind of declaration of the rights of the indigenous peoples in the United Nations. Now, a little bit of history. This is also needed here in Europe, where many people, you find many different languages here, many people from different origins. So if you are going to ask something during your research, you need to respect the privacy of the people you are going to work with. Once again, indigenous setting is an indigenous setting wherever you go, even in a urban context. So some people don't do that. At least orally, it should be done better when it is written. But some people don't do that. Some people can lie. There should be, there is a kind of repository of this kind of consents and so on, in order to people to be able to track your steps, in order to eventually demand if something goes wrong. But there are reasons for being suspicious. I mean, there are for not relying on everybody on behalf of the indigenous peoples. Try the following. Let me start with some examples. One is Panama. Panama has some 7, 8 different nationalities, different nations, each one with its own religion, language, and cosmovision. One is the Guna indigenous people. Their women do this kind of work that I am wearing here in my t-shirt. It is called mola, in plural molacana. They are living on the Caribbean shore of Panama and Colombia. And one day, I have many friends living over there, and one of those friends of mine told me, hey, one day a scientist came here, and there was a big discussion here. Do we allow the scientist to run her research or not? And during the discussion, one argument was the following: oh yeah, this person looks a nice guy and so on, so it is not going to be bad for us. And then someone gave an answer saying something like, well, when the Spaniards came here to Abya Yala, to Americas, they were, at the beginning they were nice too, but at the end of the day, you have seen what has occurred. Our lands were taken, and many people were killed. Many indigenous peoples were eradicated. So being nice is not enough for accepting someone to make a project. And they can spend ages, 1 year, 2 years discussing before giving you an authorization to go ahead with your project. Moreover, they can give you your authorization today, and a few days afterwards they make an assembly again and discuss again, and they quit the permission, and so on and so forth. So if you are going to go there, you must be sure that you are that you are going to respect, and even if you are respecting the rights of the indigenous, like the Guna and others, you still have to organize your budget, your time management, and convince your professor at the university that if the project takes much longer than expected, it is not your failure. It is that there is a people making a big discussion and evaluating you. They have good reasons for doing that. They don't want bad aspects of history to be repeated. Once again, I agree with the positions of many Mexican biologists who like I don't know Victor Manuel Toledo, Arturo Gómez Pompa. They propose the universities to the indigenous guys, young men, young women, go to the university, get trained by the university system, and then turn back to their homelands and be useful for their own people. And this is their discussion. This is their right, and they can even learn in the university how the Westerners, the hombre blanco, the white people, use to make business, probably in order to the indigenous to decide, do we make our own business or not. I agree with this position. So that occurs in countries like Panama. In Panama, which is also which is recall my country, there is a problem that there has been a chronic instability in land ownership. As a consequence, the Latino farmers, or not only the indigenous, but also the Latino farmers, people like me, when you go to their farms and you try to do science with them, they feel afraid because they don't know whether you will secretly give information to someone else who wants to take the land for himself or herself, or someone in the government or someone rich in order to kick them out and then take the land. And that makes us to remember the importance of keeping an eye on the context and considering, is it realistic to me to make this research project here, or it is not? Is it ethically acceptable? I have no magic answer, but I am providing some hints, some examples. Um, well, when I was near my 30s, when I was about 29, 30 years old, I went out of Panama. There is no PhD program in Panama, and I wanted to continue studying. So after 5 years working in a biological station, lovely biological station, the Barro Colorado Island. It is wonderful to work there, but there are no indigenous peoples over there, no campesinos over there. This is excellent for basic science, but not the best place for learning the anthropology of scientific research in indigenous settings. And I wanted to learn how to do science in places in remote areas, under poor conditions, without good financial support. Because in Panama, the support for scientists is really, really poor. So I went to Mexico, which has an excellent scientific background, excellent academies, excellent universities. Biologists in Mexico are my favorite ones in the world. And they go and they send their students to the remote areas, to the indigenous settings, to complete their training and to do the thesis research over there. So that's the way I managed to arrive, thanks to support from some sponsors, I mean institutions, to go to the Mayan area and learn over there. And by staying for 4 years over there and sometimes somewhere else, I became well integrated to the society. I unfortunately did not manage to learn the Mayan language. And regarding the Mayan language, the old Mayan shamans, the chamanes, remember the physicians, the ones curing disease, the ones who know the plants and the animals and which plants are good for what. And these gentlemen one day made a kind of report in the television explaining that unfortunately the language is getting less used, and even worse, the number of young men, young women going to them for learning the wonders, the science, why not to put it that way, of curing disease using different components of the biodiversity is getting missing because they are getting old, they are dying, and the new generations are not going ahead with that. So probably if you as a university biotechnologist go there and make a kind of exchange, fair exchange of knowledge with the chamanes in the Mayan area, you are going to learn a lot and you are going to help them because they were saying, we want people to come here to learn. And I remember the journalist asked, do you need them to be Mayans? They said, no, whoever wants to come here. Of course, the Mexican government has rules. The Mexican revolution inherited that country, imprinted the country with a number of legal instruments. And of course, it is very important to find that there are different places, different conflicts, and so on. But you once again need to respect the rules, and that's one thing I wanted to say. Still, you wherever you go, bring your free, prior, and informed consent, because you need to play fairly with them and respect your word. Respect your word. Something interesting, and I want to tell you here is the following. As well as in Panama, the Mexican indigenous peoples remember the colonization and the conquest like a process occurring just a few days ago. More than 500 years afterwards, they still remember what was occurring. One of the aspects enabling the success of the conquest of the indigenous countries in Latin America by the Spanish was probably technology, the guns, cannons, and horses and so on. But another very important was political. Wherever you go, you find people arguing with each other, having political differences with the other or with someone belonging to the same indigenous people. So in Mexico, for instance, there was a lady called Malinche in the Spanish version of her name, and she married Hernán Cortés, the conquistador, and there were political reasons separating Malinche and the people she belonged to on one side, and the Aztecs, the Moctezuma, the Huaytatuani, the main rulers of the Mayan empire, and that facilitated the participation of other indigenous in the process of conquering Mexico. Something similar occurred in Peru and everywhere. And if this is true, then there is no wonder it occurs everywhere. Remember here near Italy, here in Greece, during the we call in Spanish the guerras médicas, when the Persians were coming to the Balkan Peninsula, and the Spartans, 300 Spartans, were going to defend the Thermopyles pass, and someone from Greece, a Greek, gave information to the Persians in order to them to find a way to attack from the Spartans from the rear. So it is not rare. You find wherever you go, you find people having personal interests. So a few years ago, I was working in the Amazon, and I was helping a project by Katia Sidali. She was the principal investigator there. She wanted to contribute to the commercialization of a plant called Ilex guayusa here in Europe. She wanted to give the contribution, taking advantage of the fact that the plant is already being commercialized outside the country, outside Ecuador, and inside too. and she was trying to convince people that the labels like uh, um, geographic indications were a nice alternative for that, because this kind of label is not like a patent. A patent, you have one individual earning the money, because if I invent Coca-Cola, then I am the one going to get the money because I was inventing the formula. But plants like guayusa and the plants we eat and drink are a result of collective innovation, indigenous knowledge, indigenous millenary biotechnology. So the geographic indication was a good alternative for trying to promote the commercialization of the plant in Europe. Big discussions were emerging over there. I was present. One, the plant is holy. It's true. This is a holy plant. But it was already being subjected to commercialization. Nevertheless, there was someone saying that the research was going to offend the religiosity of the indigenous peoples because the plant is a holy plant. One other discussion was no, without the agreement of the indigenous, it cannot be commercialized. It's true, and that's why the work included a very open and democratic discussion over there, submitting the investigator herself, and I was present. I was supporting the research too, to the decisions of the collective of the people. But at the end of the day, they emerged someone else who was an indigenous. I am not going to tell from which ethnical group, having, I don't know, a relative, another indigenous of the same native, the same indigenous people living here in Europe permanently, and this person wanted to have the chance of um, having the right of the only right of commercializing the plant here. So on one side you find people saying we have to defend our collective knowledge, and on the other side you find members of the same indigenous people trying to obstaculize the work of others just in order to take advantage and profit and earn money by selling their holy plant somewhere else in the prostituted European market. Well, this is one of those cases where I really said, well, it was good that we did not succeed, that the researchers did not succeed in her effort, because otherwise some members of the indigenous people would have been spreading wrong versions of what was occurring. And you, as a biotechnologist, should take a position. And my suggestion is you make like Katia Sidali, remain loyal to the people you are working with. Once again, the people in plural, not to individual persons. If the indigenous peoples are not in agreement with themselves, you should not enforce anything. Let the things as they are, yeah, let it be. Like John Lennon and Paul McCartney said, just let it be. They are not mental handicaps. They are very intelligent people, and as intelligent as you and I, and they will find a way to solve their own problems. So if you try to push ahead one of your biotechnological ideas in an indigenous area, and the people don't want it, don't do it. You are not going to die. Nobody is going to die if you respect the sovereignty of the people. Another place I have been working is here in Italy, and that's the last part I want to mention. I have had the pleasure of staying for about 2 years or something on South Tyrol, that's on the Italian Alps. This is politically Italy, but remember that this is ethnically, linguistically Tyrol. I don't know to what extent it is proper to call it Austria, because I didn't have enough time cohabitating and learning from the lowland Austrians. I don't know to what extent the people in Vienna near the Donau are similar, really similar, to the people of the highlands here in the Tyrol. But I am convinced that they are very similar to the other Tyroleans, the ones living on the other side of the border. Here I detected something. You can smell it. I am quite a good German speaker, and that really helped me to get integrated into the society, to the extent the society allows you to get integrated. I never had troubles with anyone over there. I am good at Italian speaker, so I didn't have problems with Italians too, even. But I was born and grown in Panama during a time where still Panama was occupied by the troops of the United States, living there, having military positions over there, and the only time I have been in another country, smelling a feeling of regretting the invader after Panama has been here in South Tyrol. You guys, you are here in Italy in an Italian university learning biotechnology. If you go to South Tyrol, learn German first. Use German. Speak in the language of the guys over there. They will have their own mechanisms for deciding or letting you to work and to which extent you are going to do it. But it is just the same like going to the Amazon for working with the indigenous over there, or to Mexico or to Panama. If you get adapted, you are better welcome, and you can believe me, there are also many colleagues over there who are very keen to work also with Italian members of the academy. But if you learn the language, it will definitely help better, because we need to be open-minded. We need to be open-minded. Many U.S. Americans in Panama never learned Spanish. They were spending the whole life over there, and many of them never learned Spanish. Others did, and you know what? They are back in Panama now, retired. They are pensionisti. They are retired. They are living in Panama. They speak Spanish, and they have been very welcomed by many people in Panama, and quite well integrated. So integration is a main topic. Mutual respect, and that's all. So let's go to the conclusions, and thanks for listening. Have a nice time, and remember, wherever you go to make a field work, bring your free, prior, and informed concept. Bring it printed, engage with the people. If you can print it in the language of the people you are going to work with, it is even better, because being transparent is always welcome on an indigenous setting.